Yeah, thank you for inviting me to speak this morning. Happy Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers, those of us that have mothers, and of course, blessed be to the mother of us all. It's a privilege to be asked to speak to you this morning and to be a longtime friend of the congregation, and especially these last few years to have the opportunity to work with you more closely. This month's theme, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, is precisely what it says, a goal. But how do we make that goal a reality? What role is each of us called to play in living out our UU values, both as individuals and in our communities, in a way that is truly transformative? In short, how can we be the spirit of love and justice at work in the world? It's a huge topic, and we only have time to look at a couple of aspects, and specifically to ask what is uniquely ours to offer. Sadly, I don't have all the answers, but I do have some of the questions. We can only find meaningful solutions if we work on this collaboratively. What do we have to offer? Well, let's start with an easy question. What is Unitarian Universalism anyway? An easy question, right? How many of you here today have done the elevator speech exercise? Where you're asked to describe Unitarian Universalism in the short ride down in the elevator. Of course, the only time we do that is if we're at the CN Tower, or if we're downtown and just pray that the lift breaks down at floor number 12. Why is it so difficult? Well, we go to church on Sundays. We sing hymns from a hymn book. We have ministers and chaplains. We have religious education. The vocabulary we use comes directly from Christian denominations. And that's not to say it's a bad thing, but it is misleading. Right after coming out of all this, we kind of have to then backpedal. Well, it's a church, but it's not a regular church. And we sing hymns, but really we change the words. And religious education isn't always religious. You know, we like to talk to children about sex. And of course, we put an idea into someone's mind, and then we have to say, we're not that. It's kind of like how we as Canadians describe ourselves as not being American. Not surprising that we're confused. Sometimes we're frustrated and disappointed that new people don't find us right away. Sometimes I'm surprised that people do find us, despite how sometimes we make it difficult. Clearly, the vocabulary of organized religion is not serving us well. This reminds me of the fable, I'm sure most of you have heard, where a group of blindfolded people are presented with an elephant. Each one of us perceives, in fact feels, this elephant in our own individual and peculiar way. Is this a snake? Is it a tree trunk? Is it a wall? We know that behind this, the truth is the elephant is what it is, but manifests itself in different ways to each and every individual. So, what if the same was true for Unitarian Universalism? We struggle describing Unitarian Universalism using vocabulary of traditional religion, but is UUism a religion? I learned actually not to ask that question, particularly when there's ministers in the room, and that's one of the reasons why I'm being put far away from Sally. In truth, really what I'm asking is, we know our faith has a long and proud heritage stemming right back to the Enlightenment. But is it still a religion? Is it only a religion? We're lucky today, actually, to have people that have actually created Unitarian Universalism in the room today, and they're sitting right next to you. Each and every one of us has crafted and continues to craft Unitarian Universalism into something wonderfully unique. It's not always comfortable. In fact, sometimes it can be downright challenging. But it is our own chosen faith. Is anyone born Unitarian Universalists? Do people actually convert? Rather, we independently develop our own understanding of all things physical and metaphysical, and then we stumble on this thing called Unitarian Universalism, and we see our values and insights reflected back to us. And it continues to be created by every human soul that asks the questions, the fundamental questions, and discovers answers for themselves. Many of you may have heard that until the merger in 1961, the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America were independent Christian denominations. Historically, both denominations were created and named around specific religious dogma. In the case of the Unitarians, the belief in the unity of the Godhead and, consequently, the humanity of Jesus. In the case of the Universalists, a belief in a loving God who would not sentence anyone to eternal hell and damnation. So what did the union of these two Unitarian and Universalist statement of faith look like when they were brought together? Absolutely nothing. Because there was no joint statement of faith. Now that might have been a frustrated compromise, or it might have been a brilliant new transcendent theology. I think it's a bit of both. In fact, the term Unitarian Universalism didn't exist before 1961. In fact, Unitarian Universalist was created first, simply to give a name to this new creature that was being invented. Like many corporate entities that come together and merge, they create the name by adding the names of the partners. Just like those law firms that every time they get a new partner, the name gets longer, longer, and longer. So folks, we may be the only religion that's named after a corporate merger. While I do have a deep and sincere love of the heritage of both our Unitarian and Universalist traditions, Unitarian Universalism just isn't exactly easy to roll off the tongue. So we're left without a statement of faith. No clear defining theology. Unitarian Universalism is not like other religions, especially Western religions. We have no higher authority, no exalted deities and revealed text, no UU Pope. In his 2004 conference lecture at the CUC's annual meeting, now retired UU minister, Reverend Ray Drennan, describes this vacuum as the empty center of Unitarian Universalism. He presents it as the idea of a possibility, challenging us to name that which each of us hold to be sacred in our individual and in our collective lives. Something that inspired me and challenged me is this wonderful poster that I'm sure a lot of you have seen about the golden rule expressed in the words of the world's different religions. And given our small numbers in the actual word, I was really pleased to see Unitarian Universalism included on this poster. But then I kind of stepped back and thought, you know what? Actually, this poster is something that we would create as Unitarian Universalists and could even be used to describe this congregation. Each of us finding the path that speaks to us individually. Something that transcends individual faith expressions, but encourages each of us independently and collectively for spiritual growth and shared action for the caring of the world. Sound familiar? UUism is not a mass market, prefabricated plastic doll's house. It provides the insight and the tools for each of us to build individual path of discovery and deep connection, and inspires us to take action. The conclusion for me is that UUism is quite different from other religions. It operates at a different level. It's a framework and a toolkit for creating deeply personal meaning-making. We can label it a philosophy, spirituality, or religion. So when directly asked the question, is Unitarian Universalism a religion? My answer is, yes it is, for some, but for all of humanity who have discovered UUism, and for those that have yet to, it is a meta-religion. Something that is used to create individual means of making. Peter, earlier on today, gave us a little bit of background to what's happening in the world of religion. We live in volatile times. We've seen the numbers reflecting of the decline in formal religiosity and of the increased distrust that people have in organized religion. However, reportedly, 20% of Canadians aged 18 to 30 identify as spiritual but not religious. As we know, the very nature of community is changing. Our institutional structures and processes are transient, and we've come to realize that social action is more effectively performed by specialized agencies focused on a particular area rather than just the general charity of religious bodies. Going to jump ahead to slide 32, please. Our current perspective is to put these actions into words, is to think about how we come together in our UU communities. Are we okay there, Gordon? There we go. Thank you very much. Our perspective of the world, as we look at it from here in the congregation, is that we're part of a solar system. We come together, we organize as independent congregations to create this entity we call the Canadian Unitarian Council. It's a council of equals. There is no head office. We might consider that this as our CUC sphere of influence. When we look beyond the CUC sphere into the wider world, we recognize that there are others out there who call themselves UUs, but may not call themselves that, but have very similar values. We have what we call the affiliated communities, entities such as CUSJ, the Canadian Unitarians for Social Justice. We have UMOC, the UU Ministers of Canada, that are, again, independent communities, not directly tied into the CUC. And we tend to think of these together as being the core of our faith. But we've learned that there are other expressions of Unitarian Universalism. Some of you may subscribe to the UU Hysterical Society online, fabulous cartoons. There's a minister in Kingston that has a program called Soulful Singing, a ministry dedicated to the practice of singing in community. Young adults, we know, prefer to gather and worship in different ways. There is not one expression of UUism, and it's not all in the walls of these congregations. Finally, we have kindred spirits. Those people out there that definitely don't have the label of UU, but certainly share many of our shared values. We must acknowledge that, that being in interdependent relationship with these entities, we can no longer place ourselves at the center of our universe. We are faced with the opportunity and the challenge of shifting our perspective much wider. We've learned that Unitarian Universalism is expressed in many forms beyond our traditional congregations, and even more so in the future. Moreover, many of our congregations are themselves adapting, attracting different populations in different ways. From what we have learned, it's time to shift the center of gravity of Unitarian Universalism to a model that is more diverse and diffuse, in the hope that we can be more prolific, expanded into a UU sphere of influence. Shifting that center of gravity to incorporate those non-traditional UU expressions of the people in our midst and the people of the next generation. There are fuzzy edges of the sphere of influence with our kindred spirits, and this presents opportunities for collaborative projects, initiatives, and to share resources. It paves the way for a movement of passionate communities and individuals. We can work in concert with our kindred spirits. In fact, this congregation has been a prime example of that with the Danforth Multi-Faith Commons. Interestingly, it can become a challenge to decide how to engage in social action. When should the congregation go it alone? When should we work in collaboration with others who may have more resources and more specialization? And let's not forget that empowering and encouraging our members to become the embodiment of love and justice in their daily lives magnifies our impact in many and often subtle ways. We could lead in the creation of what I call the big U, to create that big tent, religious, spiritual, and humanist, liberal progressives, all under the same social pressures, working in union. Unitarian Universalism is an exacting meaning-making framework. It reveals itself to us in many unique ways. It can manifest as a worldview and a moral philosophy, spirituality, and, yes, a religion. But when we turn and look around, we see there are dozens of people, each shining their own way, looking back at us. We are each called to take full ownership and responsibility for our place in the web. No one else can stand in our place. Yet we are held in the communion of all beings, not just human beings, the communion of life. This congregation stands out in its commitment to spiritual growth and action for the care of this world. I feel blessed to have shared this time with you, and I can't think of a better way of closing this time than by sharing the artwork of one of neighborhood's creative talents, are Lauren Renzetti. Indeed, we are all interconnected. Thank you, and blessed be.